get your game face on. I need a seat on that throne. Go. She'll leave it all on the floor. If there's a knock on the door, don't leave us in, we them boys. Let's go. You know the motto.
Go big or go home. We are coming to you from Madison, Wisconsin. Ahmed Fareed, Matt Cassel, Joshua Perry. Ahmed Fareed wearing his new heated vest. And you can tell I have it on the hottest sitting right now by the red light if you are watching on YouTube right now. We just got done seeing Joshua's Buckeyes get a 2-touchdown victory over Wisconsin. We'll talk about that first, but we will, as always, talk about all the Big Ten games and then some honorary Big Ten teams, the teams that will be in the Big Ten next year out in the West Coast playing right now, USC, Oregon, Washington. We'll briefly talk about those teams. And then Notre Dame as well had a big win. So we should talk about that too. So they're an honorary Big Ten team. So let's start, Joshua. We always let you kick it off when your Buckeyes show out like they do in prime time. A 2-touchdown victory. Travion Henderson and Marvin Harrison, two gigantic playmakers. Travion Henderson comes back and goes for over 200 scrimmage yards in the game. What's your number one takeaway for your Buckeyes staying undefeated again?
I personally like the way that they're winning. It was a little bit uncomfortable for me early on in the year. y'all went through the growing pains with me here, but the idea that they do not need to put up 40 points on a given night, I like that. I really do. So it starts with the defense, and there were some moments where Wisconsin was able to drive the football. I think that was good for Ohio State to feel that type of having to respond. There were sudden changes that they had to respond to as well off of turnovers. And I think generally was a pretty good response there. But ultimately, when you have playmakers, and we saw what Marv did, we saw how important Travion Henderson is to that game plan. I've been saying for the weeks that he's out that it certainly helps to have a guy like that in there. And they had Emeka Egbuka available and didn't use them. I think it's good. I think Kyle McCord is the biggest thing that needs to come along. And when he does not turn the football over, I think he is good enough because he's surrounded by great talent. He's surrounded by really good scheme. But if he gives the football away, it becomes much more difficult for Ohio State to be the team that they can be.
Yeah, and you don't want to stamp that in his head, too, because he's played well and he hasn't had a ton of turnover problems. But at the end of the day, like the red zone tonight, that's a learning opportunity. When you're 1st and 10 and you're rolling out, you're trying to make a play, but the coverage does not dictate that you throw that ball and then it results in a turnover. That's a big swing, not only of momentum, but at the same time, like I said, you're 1st and 10, throw the ball away, live to fight another down, all that stuff. But again, you brought it up. Travion Henderson, I mean, his presence in the backfield, what he can do and what he can create, over 200 yards of offense today. And also,
he went for almost 7 to carry. It's
crazy. And then Marvin Harrison Jr., I mean, those are two of the best in terms of their respective positions in the entirety of college football. And so you can see that we always knew that they had tremendous skill, but then when you see those guys on the field, and if they can keep them healthy down the stretch for a championship run, that's going to be the key for this team.
They're cheat codes on offense. Because when you're in trouble and when you have a young quarterback, you just throw it up to Marvin Harrison, which he did a couple of times in this one. What do you think, Joshua, about the buzz around Marvin Harrison being in that Heisman conversation?
I think he's right there. And, we were having a conversation before we started recording, and I was like, maybe he becomes the Heisman odds leader. And then you look at what Bo Nix has done. And I know that Oregon has a loss, but he has been phenomenal. Even in the loss to Washington, he was really good there. Moral of the story is I think there is more hype and more buzz around him, and he deserves it. And when you talk about the Heisman, to me, it's what an individual does on the football field. It's how they can affect winning for their team. And if Marvin Harrison Jr. is not playing for Ohio State, they might have 2 losses right now. And I'm not saying that to be hyperbolic and to be dramatic. That's how important he is to his football team. And so I think folks around America, they're starting to see the stats. When they tune into the game, they're like, dang, this dude really is that difference maker.
Yeah. It's kind of like one of those things where the college football playoff rankings, it's like the first few rankings actually don't mean anything.
Right.
It's all about that last one.
100%.
So if it comes down to Michigan versus Ohio State, if J.J. McCarthy goes out and throws for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns, he'll probably be the Heisman frontrunner after that. But like Marvin Harrison's put himself in that position. And I think when you think of all the playmakers in college football, and Ohio State doesn't have a plethora of them too. I mean, Marvin Harrison, maybe 1, 2, 3
100%. And when you look at Marvin Harrison, it's how do you impact the game on a weekly basis, the consistency factor that you have to have. And when you look at his production, not only his production, but his ability to change the game, he does it week in and week out. And that's something that you have to identify if you're voting for a Heisman Trophy, because I know it. Look, I understand it. It usually goes to a quarterback. Why? Because they touch the ball every single time, and a lot of times,
and you would say
that
it should
determines.
you would say it should go to a quarterback.
It should, if they're performing at a certain level.
Yes,
of course, I say it should go to a quarterback. But at the same time, this is a scenario where you look at it, and if they didn't have Marvin Harrison, like Joshua just said, maybe they are a 2-loss team.
Yeah.
But Marvin Harrison is a difference maker. He's a coverage dictator. He's a guy that they utilize not only on the outside, but they move him around the slot. He showed his versatility this year. They've shown growth in his game, and he makes big play after some of those plays that he made tonight. Like, look, I understand the shallow route, good concept,
Right.
good coaching,
Right.
but then it's the play in the back of the end zone, the fade route, underthrown, comes down, traffic in his face, catches the ball, completes it. And then I think also sometimes people don't realize when you talk about the Heisman Trophy winner, you're talking about an individual that loves football, an individual that cares about football, an individual that commits himself on a daily basis. And every time we've talked to this coaching staff, every time you talk to that individual himself, it's amazing.
Yep.
Like what he dedicates on a daily basis. They even said in the coaches meeting this week, it was so interesting for me to hear. He's like, we've got to be careful sometimes when we try to implement certain plays, because if we don't use those things and he thinks that we are going to, they're going to go out, he's going to go out in the field and spend time on it. He's going to go out there and spend 30, 40 minutes to make sure that he is technically right on how he's going to run the route. And that's what I appreciate about a guy like him.
I want to give some love to Wisconsin here briefly,
100%.
because there were a lot of things that they did in this game. They kept it close. It was 10-10 in the second half. I want to give some love, Matt, to Braden Locke, the redshirt freshman. The transfer comes over, is now a starter because Tanner Mordecai went down. And there were times in this game where I asked Joshua, I was like, man, who's the best quarterback in this game? You got the redshirt freshman, you got Kyle McCord for Ohio State. What'd you think of Locke, and what'd you think of Wisconsin overall stand in this
right
one?
You know, it was interesting because you look at it and they've had some injuries, right? Ches Malusi was a huge loss for them. Tanner Mordecai, a guy that they brought in to kind of fill that seat and be a veteran presence, he gets lost, or at least he's injured right now. They say he can come back, but who knows whether or not. And this is
Braylon Allen in the second half of this football
Braylon
game.
Allen in the second half of this football game. But when you look at his composure, his poise that he had throughout the course of the game, it didn't start well. But then he takes them on a 2-minute drive at the end of the half, and they go and score points. Then they come out at halftime, they get the football. He makes a huge 3rd and long conversion, great throw down the field, and then he has a QB draw, right, which he takes off. Great call, by the way.
Awesome.
But then how about the throw down in the red zone? He feels pressure. He's rolling to his right, doesn't panic. He steps up in the pocket. He keeps his eyes downfield, delivers a ball, makes it a 10-10 game. I mean, that's where you see guys like him grow up in front of your eyes as an audience, because he hasn't had a lot of time on task. He hasn't been in these situations, and game speed is completely different than when you're practicing and you're going out there. You could be the best practice player. We've seen them.
Oh, yeah.
And then all of a sudden, when the lights come on and you see that game speed, it's
Panic.
a lot. It's a panic. It's different. But you're going up against one of the best defenses in the entire nation.
Yeah.
And even though it was that circumstance, I felt like he stepped up even late in the game when it was backed up and he converted the 3rd and 15.
Yeah.
I mean, he made some plays. Again, they are talent deficient right now, comparatively speaking, to Ohio State. But the way that he battled, the way that he continued to make throws in big situations, I thought it was an outstanding performance for a young guy.
And I'll say this too, is there is a polish that he needs to put on his game because he's young. Some of the throws that he made, though, I'm sitting here like, wow, this is going to be a really good player, right? Like, he is a guy that I think can really impact winning for Wisconsin football into the future. And it's not all of the time right now because he's still in a development phase, but
he's in his second start.
But you look at this dude and you're like, he's cut from a different cloth.
I agree. There were some fun moments out there. And if you're you're Luke Fickell, and if you're a Wisconsin fan, I know you love Luke Fickell, your former
Mhm.
coach at Ohio State, that going to be headed in the right direction.
Yeah.
They're going to be a force in the Big
And
Ten.
I'm telling you right now, too, the way that they battled out there, that's
Mm.
what he wants them to be. And he has been trying to impress upon them that they are fighters to their core.
Yep.
And game by game, you're starting to see more of that, what they did coming back against Illinois and then standing up and making this a tough, gritty game against a really good Ohio State team.
Yeah.
He has the right mentality to lead a program like this.
And even at the end of the game, I thought it was a statement for Luke Fickell moving forward. They get a stop when Ohio State gets the ball back. They're down 2 scores, and they go and get a stop,
Yep.
right?
Call
And get the ball.
timeouts.
Yeah, call a few timeouts, get the ball back in your offensive hands, and see what they can go do. That is progress for this program.
100%.
Yep. Yeah, I give them a lot of credit. They kept it close. And there's someone in this room that came in 2 days ago and said Wisconsin will definitely cover and possibly win.
It wasn't me.
You had the half a point.
Guess what?
It was-
14 and a half.
The
was
the hook is what saved
what-
you.
Definitely.
It
I knew
wasn't. It
I
wasn't me though.
But
you
so
were right.
I called that, and that's why I bring it up at the end there to get full credit for my prediction.
What else
2
have you
days
called
ago.
this year?
I called
That we would be doing post game most nights, and we don't.
we're
The
standing to
the Kyle
Yeah.
Manungai.
Kyle Monangai.
Yeah,
Yes, running
and,
back.
and what happened that
Well,
week?
he went 8 carries for like 6 yards the next game, but then after that, he went for 140. So
What was your prediction a week ago?
Michigan State would lose by 40, and I was right on that one.
Yeah, maybe.
So that one was
were
pretty
you?
good.
I
Pretty good.
said that they were going to lose by 50 plus, and I got
Yeah.
pretty damn close.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think Michigan's going to beat
That
their
was a
next
fair
opponent.
assessment.
I think they're going to beat their next opponent by 50 plus, perhaps. Big Ten Saturday night in Ann Arbor.
That's a great
Michigan-
promo.
Michigan and
Woo!
Purdue. So see if we're right on that one. All right, I think the second most interesting game in the Big Ten has to be the one that happened in Chicago. Northwestern upset win over Maryland.
Jeez, man.
Not Chicago technically, right?
Evanston, but
Evanston.
Chicagoland area.
Close enough. 33-27 was the final score. We had this one on. I mean, Talia Tungavailoa threw the ball 47 times. He threw his 3 touchdowns, but just enough mistakes and enough big plays, Joshua, by Northwestern. I mean, what are they right now? What did we say? They're
4-4.
4-4.
I mean,
Incredible.
legit shot to make a bowl.
Maybe
Yep.
the most surprising team. I think maybe it's not a maybe. The most surprising team in the Big Ten. Rutgers is up there.
Yeah,
But the fact that they won
No.
one game last
this
year.
is the most
With
surprising.
the chaos that went on,
You're right.
yes,
and
all-
this
all
is to
of that.
start the season.
Right.
It's not
Right.
like it took place in the off season or anything like that. This took place right before
a
season.
coach
I mean-
who has never been a coordinator in Division One
And-
is your head
And
coach.
he
now.
might
Yeah.
be coach of the year in the Big Ten. And I'm
He
not,
should be.
again, it's not trying to be funny.
should
I
be,
love what Greg
100%.
Schiano's done. You can go through the line and look at some of the other coaching performances, certainly. But I mean, what David Braun has done in the circumstances that he was handed, never expected to be a coach at this level, does not have that experience, taking over
First time.
a program that is in controversy and turmoil. And they say, you know what, we're just going to play ball and we're going to do better than we did a year ago. That's ridiculous to me.
It's unbelievable. And also the fact that, look, Maryland's a team that we thought could compete in the Big Ten East.
Got off to a hot start.
It got off to a hot start, but we've seen this episode happen time and time
Like
again,
Groundhog
right?
Day.
In the past, we thought it was just because the competition got stiffer.
Right.
But I mean,
Right.
that was not the case today.
Well,
But
no,
that
I
was-
mean, you look at their losses too, not to cut you off, but Illinois is a team that you should beat.
Right.
Northwestern is a team that you should beat.
Right.
Like this is the wheels have fallen off in many ways.
And it's unfortunate, but you have to give credit for Northwestern.
A ton of credit.
What this program has done, how they've pulled themselves out of the depths
Mhm.
of turmoil, right? And it's challenging not only as a coaching staff, but it's challenging as a player to be on that team, to dedicate yourself the way that you have to a program and to stick with it and not just take the easy way out. Maybe
I
do the
say it
transfer
every
portal.
week. I'd have quit. Like mentally, I'd have been checked out.
Right, because you don't want to answer those questions
Yep.
day in and day out.
Yep.
You don't want to have to say, look, we know we have a black cloud right now over our program,
Mm-hmm.
and every single media outlet is covering the negativity, but there's dudes there that have bought in.
Yes.
There's guys that are committed to Northwestern. And the fact right now that they're 4-4 is incredible to me. And it speaks to the leadership. It speaks to those
Yeah.
young men that are there. It speaks to their coach
Yeah.
and what they've been able to do.
Let me say this too. I mean, we watched in week 1 where they got blown out by Rutgers.
Right.
And I was sitting there And I was like, there's no shot. There is no shot for this football team. And they have fought tooth and nail every week. And now we're talking about potentially going to a bowl for them.
And nobody in the media wanted to touch that team.
Nobody
wanted to touch that team.
No.
Nobody wanted to cover that team. Nobody wanted to sit there. But now they're sitting there and they're competing week in and week out, and they go out and get a huge victory over Maryland.
And their next game against Iowa at Wrigley Field will be exclusively.
I'll tell you, offensively, don't sleep on them either.
Bruh, I mean, Brendan Sullivan, I don't know how much he was expecting to be playing this year.
Yes.
Right. Has played extraordinarily well.
Ben Bryant got hurt, and he was spinning the rock today. 70% completion, 265 yards, a couple of touchdowns.
And he was
spin that rock, dog.
And he was their leading rusher, 14 carries for 56 yards.
Go off, young man.
So Northwestern.
Bang the drum.
Bang the drum for them. They're at Iowa at Wrigley Field, like I just mentioned, exclusively on Peacock, $5.99 a month. It's the best deal in streaming. It is the best deal in streaming.
Best deal.
By far. You can watch Housewives on there too.
And
if you
can
like
get any reality television.
Yeah.
And you know that Joshua loves
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
So they got Iowa. They got Wisconsin. That's going to be tough.
Who's Maryland got next week?
But then hold on. But then they got Purdue, and then they got Illinois. I'm looking for 2 more wins for Northwestern to get them bowl eligible.
You could talk yourself into 3 of those 4. And I think 2 is something that
is legit.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's wild to think about.
I hope, you know what? I hope for that program that they do.
I do too. I have become a fan because of the way that they have stood in the face of adversity. Because I don't see.
You talk about resiliency,
brother. I would not be that guy in that locker room. Like, and I was a guy who was always committed. That to me would have I'd given myself an excuse to check out.
It would have shaken me to the core.
Yeah.
Because you're sitting there going, where do we go from here?
Yep.
Yeah.
Right before season.
Right before the season.
Yeah. And I think on the other end of it, you guys already mentioned it, like Maryland, like this is dark times for them.
They got to get out their own damn way.
They're in like danger zone right now for
it is
coaches, and this is like gut check time for them.
Well, the hard part for Maryland is that history has repeated itself.
Yep.
And it's almost like even the players on the team, how can we overcome what we've done in the past and not make it a reality now?
Yep.
But the reality keeps coming up year in and year out.
Yeah.
And it's tough, because it's just the reality of what's happened like throughout the tenure.
Totally.
So let me throw this at you. If I would have told you that Maryland and Northwestern would have had the same number of explosive passes and explosive runs in the same game, you wouldn't have believed me.
No,
because of what Maryland's offense was and what they were supposed to be,
right?
And the improvements that they had on defense, no doubt, and what Northwestern was coming into this game, what their offense and defense was supposed to be. And on explosive passes, Northwestern 7 of them, Maryland 7 of them. Northwestern outgained them on the explosives. Like that, to me, things go wrong, and for it feels like when things go wrong for Maryland, there's nothing that stops it. If that makes sense, it just piles up.
Yep.
Terps being Terps, though.
Man.
Terps being Terps v Terps. We talked about it week 2, and it's still a thing here. All right, let's move on to another team that's getting close to being bowl eligible. That's 5-3 Nebraska. Another win, this one at home, 31-14 over Purdue. I'm reading right here, Nebraska beats Purdue, and this is now their first 3-game win streak since 2016.
Jeez.
And so our guy Matt Rhule in Nebraska has got them playing well right now. So Joshua, I don't know that we saw a whole lot of this game, but we see the result. We see some of the numbers for it. And our guy, Heinrich Harburg, or as I like to call him, Starberg.
Sure.
Yeah, fine.
He's been the quarterback of the podcast many, many times. 6 completions for 122 yards and 2 touchdowns. Talk about an efficient game.
Yeah, not a lot of offense in this one. So if you're somebody who likes to watch the high-flying offensive performances,
and I will say too, there were 7 turnovers in this game.
Yeah,
so a little sloppy.
Yeah, I mean, and I kind of expected
7 turnovers.
4 by Nebraska, 3 by Purdue.
Is that
not great?
Does that shock anybody though?
And
from watching these teams,
Harburg though didn't throw an interception, so they're all fumbles.
They were all fumbles.
It's 5 fumbles for Nebraska. They lost 4 of them. Purdue fumbled 2 times. And
I'm sorry.
1.
I'll be honest with you guys. I'm just going to be honest.
Go ahead.
We didn't watch this at all.
So I caught bits and pieces. Here's my thing about it. I like what Nebraska's doing. I think that this is a team that is very old school in how it actually gets things done. What I mean by that, they try to run the football, right? And Harburg, no offense to my guy, he is a running back playing quarterback,
Yes.
and he throws some pretty balls too, right? I'm not trying to discount that, but he's a true dual threat guy.
Tyson Hill.
Yeah. But the defense for Nebraska, though, these cats play great defense.
They gave up 195 yards
Dude.
of
Yes.
total offense.
I love it.
I mean, I love it. It's, Purdue, I thought that they were going to be at a different level right now.
Yeah.
And I thought they were going to develop and progress to a certain point where they were going to be much more competitive from an offensive standpoint. But I feel like every time they take a step forward, they take a step back.
Yeah.
But you've got to give credit to Nebraska. And I love Matt Rhule. I love what he's doing with the program. They have an identity.
Yep.
They know who they are. They know that, look, there's more growth to be had. They probably need to bring a few more players in. But at the end of the day, they're going out with the guys that they have. They figured out a recipe for success, and they're going to be in the competition at the end of the day in the West.
So let me throw this out here,
Okay.
and then I'll be done.
What do you think about that?
No, I mean, I think that's every team in the West is.
So here's
It's open.
It is.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter
let
who
me
you
pull you
are.
up
You
something
are
fun
in
here.
contention.
Since we want to talk about the West. All right, so Iowa's conference record 3-2, Wisconsin 3-2 in conference, Minnesota 3-2 in conference,
Thank
Nebraska 3-2 in conference,
you.
Northwestern 2-3.
So they're in the mix.
They are certainly in the mix here.
Every team.
Just wanted to put that out there.
So
Coming into the weekend, also
No
there was
shit all over my parade.
Oh my gosh! Did
so
you say that?
coming into the weekend, there was also a scenario where we could have had a
That
7-way
was
tie
amazing.
in the West, which
Didn't
is
you
ridiculous.
send that out?
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Sickos
there was
committee.
a way. I
There's
don't
a
think
way.
it's still probably
I
possible.
don't think it's
It
possible.
might be. Who knows?
Well, it could
right?
be.
There might be a different way to get
We should
there.
check. We should guess and check. Hudson Card threw 32 passes and only had 100 yards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of wild.
Yeah, that's not great.
It's kind of
Just over 50%.
That's not great. That's not great.
It's-
Ryan Walters, year one, they're still trying to figure things out. They're
Yeah.
trying to build for the future. All right, next game. I dropped the ball. We should have talked about this game earlier, but oh well. We'll put it in now. Penn State against Indiana. I figured that we would talk about this game later because I thought it was going to be a blowout.
Yeah.
It was not a blowout. And
It
this
was
game
not.
was, let me see what it was. What was it? It was 24-24 in the fourth quarter.
Mhm.
Yes.
Mhm.
So Matt, what happened?
Well, frustration was starting to set in on the Penn State side of the ball, right?
Ooh.
And they hadn't had the explosives. We had Drew Aller throw his first pick of the year, shockingly. But we saw a picture of him on the sideline talking to James Franklin, and you saw it in his face. He's just like disturbed, disrupted. And I was sitting there going, man, they can't figure it out offensively. Their defensive side of the ball, for the most part, has been really good. Today against Indiana, they gave up explosives.
Dude. And
It was that
wasn't-
letdown game. It wasn't even little bit. It was
the
what
one
hell
that we
happened?
saw, and we were, we're kind of dropping in on some of
Yes.
these games. They ran the corner blitz,
Corner blitz.
cowboy, whatever the hell you
Which
want to call
mean-
it.
So what that means is
Go ahead.
the outside corner is firing on a blitz. So he's vacating the area,
Usually on the short side of the field
Short
in
side
college
of the field.
football.
which means the safety has to replace over the top because they're anticipating that you're going to throw what we call a side adjust.
Yes.
So the wide receiver at that point sees that corner blitz off the top of his face.
He's got to be ready for the ball
and
now.
he's got to be ready for the ball. Well, the safety did.
He was sleeping.
He didn't get that memo, and the guy's running wide open down the field and hits him
Scot-free.
for what?
Shout out to my guy Scott.
Big touchdown.
It was a touchdown.
Yeah, just a completely blown coverage.
Yeah,
You
dude.
guys
I mean,
just geeked out
so
right
here's
I
the
know.
deal. Indiana, big plays, 4 big passing plays, 15 yards or more, a 90, a 69, a 15, a 26. It's not great if you're Penn State.
No, it's not. Especially with the defense, the way that they've played, they've kept them in so many ball games, and they've been suffocating at times,
Mhm.
right? Oh, for most of the year, to be
Yeah.
honest with you.
Yeah,
Even last week against Ohio State,
dude, they played really well.
They played
all
really
year.
well.
Yeah.
yeah. And this was just one of those games that you feel like it was. You go into it, and it's, hey, it's Indiana. You know what I mean? We're gonna
That's
absolutely
what they thought
dominate.
it was.
But you can't take any weeks off
Mm-mm.
in whether it's college football, whether it's the NFL, whether it's anywhere you are. You can't underestimate your opponent, and that's what happened today. I feel like.
So what do we think about Penn State going forward here? I mean, Mike Robb is in our truck as we're watching the games. He is just apoplectic. He is just watching
what
this
was that
offense.
word?
Say that again. I'm going to use that.
See, that's not one that I'm.
No, I know.
With. I gotta add
I
that.
know.
It's
I
like
gotta
the
add that to
apocalypse.
my-
It's like the apocalypse, and he is.
Yeah.
I think he is. I
Apoplectic.
don't want to speak for Mike Robb, but he's
No, you
frustrated
can.
with the offense. He's frustrated with some of the
Could you
big
give your
plays that
best Mike Robb impression right now?
What are we doing here? What
Come
are we
on,
doing?
man.
Come on.
This offense is too
What
small,
are we
man.
doing? They're too small.
No, this offense needs to get bigger, man.
Shots. That's what I'm saying.
That's what I'm. That's
So,
what I'm saying.
They have a talent advantage. But I think there are a lot of people in the Penn State community that think right now they don't have a schematic advantage.
They don't, and I'm going to be completely honest about that. They absolutely do not have a schematic advantage. I do not like their philosophy whatsoever offensively. I do not think that there is any layer or rhythm to their play calling. It is at a bad
They
point.
don't marry anything.
They don't. And when your quarterback, your young quarterback, which I fully believe they killed his confidence in Columbus, Ohio. I believe that they did that. When your young quarterback is getting coached by the head coach on the sideline and his body language is bad, you know that there is a disconnect between what is being coached and what the quarterback wants to do and believes in. And so for me, I think when Mike Robb tells us that the offense is too small, what he's getting at is that they do not do things to be explosive. And I think that they need to just take the shots with the quarterback. Because the reality of the situation is, I know you feel like you want to compete this year, and that opportunity certainly is still out there as a one-loss team. But it is more important to develop your quarterback for the future than to just say we're going to dink and we're going to dunk and we're going to do this. And we're like, they need to take the governor off of that young man, and they need to let it rip.
Yeah, but that's not the offensive structure. And the fact of the matter is, I give Drew Aller a lot of credit because this is his first interception. That was the first pick that he's trying to make a play, and he threw down there, and that's what they're teaching him to do. This young man understands, look, I got to get the ball to my guys. This is what the offensive structure is. He plays within the system. We know that he has big play potential because we saw him against West Virginia. First series of the game. He steps up and hits Keandre Lambert-Smith for a 71-yard gain.
Mm-hmm.
We know that he's got the arm talent, all those different things. Now, this offense has just not been able to develop a consistency factor in creating those big plays. But I also think it depends on the fact that they haven't been able to produce much of the explosive run game either.
Yeah.
They were thinking that Singleton, Allen, these guys that were extraordinary last year, week in and week out, they haven't been the same type of team.
Let me ask you a question, though. Do you think that their run game is helped at all by scheme?
Well, it's the same scheme, and it dominated last year. I think people have went back, reviewed them, watched them, and started to figure out a plan of how we're going to stop them.
Let me ask you the question again. Do you think that the run game has been helped by scheme?
No,
I don't think that they've done enough
to
change it up.
They've leaned on the same successes that they've had in the past.
I agree with that.
And so you always have to adapt. And that's the thing about football that people don't understand is opponent from week to week changes, scheme changes from week to week. And so you can't go in with the same base plays that you did last week against whoever it might be and go into the next week and think that it's going to have the same successes. Because one, it's a matchup league. Two, who are you going to attack this week and how are you going to attack them? It could be different fronts. It could be a different structure in terms of
different body types.
Yeah, different body types. And so how do you attack that? And that's the biggest thing that you have to look at week in and week out is how do we win this week? How do we create different runs this week? I remember, and I'll just say this because it's true. When I was in New England, Dante Scarnecchian was our run game coordinator, and he was phenomenal. And he was a guy that week in and week out, I used to get so frustrated as a quarterback because we'd go in and we'd have a whole new run game. But this run game was very complex. It had different checks. Sometimes it was off the front, right? It was we're running to a 3 technique. We're running to a 1 technique. Sometimes we're running off a safety. Sometimes it was based off man or zone because we thought that the counter would work better versus certain things. We get guys running, right? And so it was learning a whole new run scheme every single week. But what I started to learn and appreciate is the fact that we adapted every single week. And because he was so committed to that run game and put us in the best position, that we were we were in an advantageous position every week. And as long as you knew what you were supposed to do, that's when you'd be successful. And that's the chess match in football. If you come back out and think that week in and week out, we're this type of we're a zone team, we're a counter team. Well, fronts change.
Right.
Personnel changes. Who are you going to attack?
Yeah.
And that's what they have to get to.
And I'll say in the college game, right, like you got the 20 hours. So
it's harder.
It cannot be to that level. But to your point, I think that they have made a decision. And they said our offensive line is better than it's been. And we've got these two backs that are a year better than they were last year. And a quarterback who we feel like can open things up because he can threaten better with his arm. And we're going to stay the same team that we have been philosophically. My approach is if you have an opportunity to vary the scheme, to give yourself an advantage, you need to take that more than they have taken it this year. And I think that would certainly help open up the run game a little bit more.
Yeah. I mean, you look at the stats. Katron Allen, his longest run, 12 yards. Nick Singleton, his longest run, 7 yards.
Yeah.
That is.
It's been like that all year.
It's all year.
No go on the explosive plays. And Indiana did outgain them in this game too.
Yeah, they
so
did.
Despite the win, some
It's
red
the head
flags
scratcher.
for Penn State for sure. All right, we're going to go quick hitters on all the rest of these games, including the final Big Ten game to talk about. Joshua, what do you make of Minnesota's 27-12 win over Sparty, who we need to be Sparty's spoiler because we need them to keep these games close because we have them in Columbus and we have them final game of the season for us on Big Ten Saturday night at Ford Field against Penn State. Sparty is not spoiler against Minnesota in Minneapolis.
I'm going to have the corner office people are not going to like what I have to say here because I am not going to do a great job of selling these football games. Michigan State, unfortunately, is the worst team in the Big Ten right now.
Oh, God.
And I love Harlan Barnett. Like, I think he is a man's man. He loves the game of football. I think he loves all those players on that roster. He was given a very, very difficult situation to try to step into. And that is me saying it nicely. And it has not gone well. They've gone through a quarterback change and they've had injuries. They've had players enter the transfer portal. There are probably guys on that roster that are making decisions right now about how much they really want to play. Is my red shirt still intact? Right. Like I don't know the formula for them to be successful this year. And that's how it kind of plays out on the football field right now for them. And I feel badly for them.
Yes.
Because I think a lot of people in that building deserve much better than what they're dealing with right now, but they can't get it together.
Jordan Newbin for Minnesota.
204 yards.
40. No, the bigger number for me is 40 carries.
That's Minnesota football, baby.
That is
204 yards, 2 touchdowns for him.
That's Tyler Newbin's brother, right?
Is it?
Yeah.
It has to be, right?
I think so.
Is it?
Yeah.
Newbin's a beast.
I know.
Yeah.
And then we had on the receiving end, Daniel Jackson catch 7 passes.
He's
for
a nice little
120
player
yards
that
and
we
a
don't
touchdown.
talk about nearly enough. I think he's really good.
I actually like their skill players,
Me too.
but they don't utilize. I mean, they can't get him the ball
No.
as much. And Ethan Kaliak-Manis, well, I do feel like he's a guy that has potential to be good. Right now, he's not there. But I've when you watch them on film, they've got a little bit of a skill set, and they might not be the most explosive, but these are guys that can make plays. They're good route runners. They're fundamentally sound.
Well, you want to talk about being helped out by scheme is when you're a team that runs the ball 50 times in a game, play action game, right? And so when you have guys who understand how to run routes and where to find the soft spots in the zone, you get the opportunity to throw it into some voids. And I think that really helps their wide receivers when they do decide they want to drop back.
The other part about that is you've got to show appreciation for these guys,
Mm-hmm.
because as a wide receiver, what do you want to do? Do you want to block?
No, you want to run.
You
routes
want to
and catch
run
the
routes,
football.
catch the rock, dude. So I'm sitting there, while you watch him and you appreciate him. I appreciate him more because I'm like, I know that it's fighting every instinct in your body to sit there and go put your nose in there and take on a
Perimeter
safety.
blocking, baby. Let's
block
go.
this guy. Crack the big linebacker at the line of
buddy.
scrimmage. God bless you guys.
Oh man.
So here are all the 5-win teams in the Big Ten right now who are on the cusp of being bowl eligible. You got Minnesota with that win, now a 5-win team. You got Maryland, like we mentioned before, a 5-win team. Rutgers already a bowl team with 6 wins on the season. Wisconsin's got 5 wins. Nebraska's got 5 wins. Northwestern with 4 wins. So we've got a lot of teams creeping up on that 6-win.
I like it.
Bowl eligible total. All right, real quick, Matthew.
Yes.
Notre Dame wins big over Pitt, 58-7. I had made this statement that I know they have 2 losses, but we also saw what they did against Ohio State. They were 1 yard away from winning that game against Ohio State. If Notre Dame, tell me if you agree with me or not, if they were in the college football playoff with what we've seen, they would have a chance to win it.
You know, I push back on that a little bit.
What?
Because I don't feel like offensively they're operating at a super high level right now.
58 points.
Look, I know 58 points, but did you see the production that they had from the Pittsburgh? Pittsburgh threw them 4 interceptions or 5?
Yeah, it was 4.
4 interceptions, really bad interceptions. At the same time, Notre Dame went back. Sam Hartman had one of those games, but historically, for whatever reason, if you even go back to Wake Forest, Pittsburgh has been a thorn in this kid's side.
Yeah.
And
Same thing with Louisville.
the first one wasn't a decision. It was more ball placement, right? You want to push that up over the top.
Yep.
Second one, he's thrown into a team meeting. It's one of those, it's a
ball.
quick decision, right? And I understand why he did it. You're coming off a play fake. You turn around, you got to get that ball in there. Linebacker gets his hand on it. But even then, you got 3 guys around the ball. You got to protect the football. They had a punt return, Chris Tyree, right?
Yeah. Huge.
Punt return. They had also a defensive score in this game as well, and they had 4 turnovers. So at the end of the day, first half wasn't pretty. Second half, they figured out we got to give the ball to Audric Estimator. We got to let him eat a little bit. And he went in, and when he carries the ball a significant amount of times, they usually find a way to win.
That's the formula.
Yeah, and their defense, look, they're stymied. They're stymied. I think defense can compete with anybody. There's still question marks on the offense side of the ball.
So we talked about this earlier because you asked this question earlier. And the thing that I came away with, because I do agree with you on the offensive side where they would need to maybe unlock a different level. But if you gave that defense and Al Golden, the defensive coordinator for Notre Dame, 3 weeks to prepare for an opponent, he'd suffocate them. I think that he is that good of a coordinator. And some of the schemes that I see in being at Notre Dame, you get smart players too. The things that you could teach those guys in 3 weeks, I think that they would have a plan.
It was interesting sitting in those meetings when you meet a player from Notre Dame and we're in those production meetings.
Brother,
how they can articulate their thoughts.
Oh my God.
How they can express themselves.
I'm like, they're going to take my job.
I was like, my goodness. Yeah. I was like, you guys, you stay in engineering.
Yeah, seriously.
Because they're just an impressive group of guys. But speaking of Al, he was with me in Detroit. So he was our linebacker coach, and I always loved him, his personality. He'll be a head coach sooner or later. Yeah.
All right. So final thing here. So Notre Dame is an honorary Big Ten team, as always, and they're an NBC team. Let's finish with this. We have the future Big Ten teams, and I'll give you the results out west. Washington, a little sluggish on the road at Stanford.
2 weeks in a row, though.
This
wins 42-33.
The score, I feel like, does not indicate what that game actually was, by the way. It was much closer.
It was much closer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Disappointing, but still a win. Sometimes you got to have some of those games.
They got outgained by Stanford, almost 500 yards they gave up.
Okay.
How about our boy? No, how about our boy?
Say Io Manor.
Io Manor.
Mind your manners.
Mind your manners. He's the same dude.
What did he do
against Colorado?
Oh, he had 146 yards.
146. He was the same guy against Colorado that had how many catches up to that point?
He had 28 catches for 872 yards and 16 touchdowns.
Amazing.
All in the second half. All in the second half.
Right. Doing it again.
Oregon. I think this was maybe the most impressive win of the day.
Yeah.
Number 8 Oregon goes to Utah, beats number 13 Utah 35-6.
It was the most impressive win for sure.
So
I mean, Oregon's for real.
They are.
And the manner in which they lost to Washington, that's the reason why they still are where they are. But I think this is a one-loss team that, look, don't slip up down the stretch because they're good defensively. They've got identity offensively. They can run the football. Bo Nix, extraordinary player. Like, this is a complete football team that is a dangerous football team.
So I think it was 2016 where Penn State beat Ohio State. They won the Big Ten championship, and Ohio State still got into the college football playoff because people by the end of the year decided that Ohio State was a better team than Penn State, even though they lost head-to-head. And I think the further away we get from the Oregon-Washington game, the closer to the idea that we might get that Oregon was actually the better team, and Dan Lanning decided to go for it on fourth down too many times, and that was the reason why they lost the football game. The fact that they held Utah to only 6 points does not shock me. I do not think Utah has a good offense. I did not think they would be able to move the football in this game. The 35 points is the shocker because I thought Utah's defense was legit. I'm like, they're going to have a challenge to be able to find the plays. And these 35 points came fairly easily. The first half, they did a great job, came out in the third quarter smoking. Didn't score anything in the fourth quarter, didn't need to score anything in the fourth quarter. And so to me, I'm with you. Like Oregon, you want to count somebody out for having one loss, this ain't the team to count out.
No, absolutely not. And I think that they're going to move up the rankings pretty quick.
Yeah.
One more game that we could mention, USC beats Cal by a point, 50-49.
I did a game break about this one.
You did a game break.
And you were
If you were watching Big Ten Saturday night, Joshua Perry, it wasn't your first game break. You're a pro at these.
I think the first one was better than the second one
because somebody was sitting next to you.
Why didn't you like this one?
I had the pressure, and your boy rises to the occasion under pressure. I am legit.
We expect you to step up in those situations.
This is who USC is. I mean, they're just a team that's just going to have entertaining games that are 100 points.
I'm not even entertained by them anymore. I'm just frustrated and disappointed when I watch them, and I'm not even an alum like Matt Cassel. They got to figure it out. This is not acceptable.
Things have to change, and you've got a guy like Caleb Williams who is as special as they come in terms of the quarterback position, but at the same time, you're looking to make the step from one year to the next year, right? And Lincoln Riley came in last year, had a great first year, and I'm not discrediting anything, but then this year you start out with competition that you should beat.
Yeah.
And then you get to even Arizona the week before Notre Dame, they give up 500 yards and they needed to come back. I think they're down 17 at one point, and they constantly have to do that offensively. And it blows my mind that they can't figure it out defensively, because this is a school with such a great heritage and tradition and all the things that come along with it, that you should be able to bring guys in and compete on a consistent basis. And right now it's like, gosh, we hope to outscore teams.
Mm-hmm.
And Cal is not one of those teams that you think that you have to go down to the wire and win by a point. They went for 2 points at the end, by the way. Cal did.
They gave up 527 yards in this game. That is beyond unacceptable.
Beyond unacceptable, but it's not shocking.
It's not at all.
And that's the scary part.
Yes.
Right? Where is our standard?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. They got to figure that out.
All right. Well, we'll be in LA a couple times next year.
Yeah, but
here's the problem.
Yes, we will.
This is the last week we're going to all be together this year.
I'm going to cry when I get back to the
hotel.
I'm
really not excited about
I've
that.
got like a 3-hour drive home, and I'm going to cry tomorrow in the car.
I know.
By myself.
But that's okay. We'll still figure out a way to do this. I don't know how, but we're going to figure out a way to do this. We're going to charge Matt with that. Matt will figure out a way how to do this podcast.
Thank you for taking that responsibility.
Thanks, Matt.
No problem.
Thanks, Matt.
We're going to do it from right after the game on Sunday. We're going to force him to do it.
All right, that's it. Go big or go home from Madison, Wisconsin. Look at that. My vest, the battery's dead. It stopped working midway.
Explain the vest to the people who don't know about it.
It's got a battery in it, and if you push the button one time,
where'd you get that?
Cold, Amazon. You push it 2 times, it's medium, and you push it 3 times, it's hot. And I had it on hot, and it lasts about 3 hours if it's hot, and I was using it earlier today, and so it's done now.
You know what? I'm going to go home on that note, and I'm going to get into a warm bed.
And now we're done.
Go big, push all 3 buttons.
All right. We'll see you next time.
See you. Bye.
Go big or go home.